So let me just introduce to you this wonderful panel gathered here tonight this is totally alphabetical order based on their last name, from left to right. Hannah Bae, founder of Noona's Ice Cream and Bake Shop. Vivian Chen, founder and CEO of Chinatown Hospitality Group. Choi-Rodriguez, founder of Vesta Chocolate and food stylist. Alice Jun, founder and brewer of Hana Makgeolli. And Jee Kim, co-founder and director of operations, Lion Hospitality, which operates the restaurant 8282. And our moderator this evening, chef and writer, Caroline Choe. Thank you so much, and we look forward to this conversation. Caroline?
Hi, good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing? Wow, that was so enthusiastic. Okay, so welcome this evening. This is actually, I can't think of a better way to usher in Women's International Day weekend. However, let's be honest, Women's Day is every day for us, and but we'll celebrate this weekend, sure. But nonetheless, I'm honored to be up here with all these women here who base their businesses here in New York City and New Jersey, respectively. And so can't think of a better way to be here. So thank you for being here this evening with us. So why are we here? Because these women here have founded their businesses in New York City and New Jersey of food and hospitality. And whether it be with their storefronts or with their brands, this is a space in which they have navigated now for some of them for a whole career and some of them for a transitional career. Personally, I am involved in food as a transitional career. My first career, I was in education for 13 years before I went into the food realm. But for a lot of us, I know that is a similar journey. So if anyone wants to jump in, where did you start your career? We're passing around the mic, by the way.
Okay. First, thank you, Caroline. This is truly an honor to be with you guys and my mentor here today. It's one of the organizations that I'm really fond of and happy to share our story together here. So to answer your question, I don't have a traditional Korean kind of career track, and definitely not from the food business background, but I do have background in operations and brand management, which does come handy when operating a restaurant.
For me, it wasn't always makgeolli. I had been homebrewing for the majority of my life since I was a kid, but after school, I went into consulting and was working at Deloitte for 5 years.
After college, I went into advertising, and then I fell into food styling, and then I fell into chocolate business when I met my husband.
I started as a lawyer. Right after college, I went straight to law school. And then I found my way into hospitality through being a hospitality lawyer. So,
well, I was in operations management before I started Noona's Ice Cream and Bake Shop, and I am a self-taught baker, so I've been baking all my life pretty much, and I wanted to focus on ice cream because that's my favorite dessert, basically. So didn't think that I would be in food, but somehow, ice cream found me, and wanted to start a business through just meeting a lot of business owners and having that entrepreneurial spark just light up within me. Like in my early 20s, while I was in operations, and just learned a lot from my boss, actually, just being a small business owner, and learning under him, and then learning how to pretty much start a business on my own and having that confidence. So, yeah.
That's a really good thing. But No, it's a good explanation. It's very thorough. That said, it is to go from one. We know your parents are very happy with you, Vivian, by the way, with your career choices. But why did we all go into food? I mean, I know my reason, but why? What brought you there?
Well, I didn't choose food. Food chose me.
Care to expand on that? Just
In retrospect, I really should have known because I remember in college, I skipped classes to bake like 1 week. And there are just a lot of signs along the way that I love food. But I just didn't think that that's a career that I could take. And my parents never would have approved. So I love food, but I just didn't know that I could take it as a career step until I couldn't anymore. And I did. So in that case, food chose me.
My grandparents were both in food. They had the typical diaspora story. They came from Korea. My grandmother, she was a single mom, and she had a fish fry shop in Harlem, actually. And then my other grandparents had a liquor store in Los Angeles, and then they progressed into owning a motel, and then running cafeterias in high-rise buildings. So for me, it kind of is a full circle moment. I grew up helping out in the kitchen and serving and seeing that side of the business. And then after law school, I continued to help my family. My uncle still has cafeterias in Texas. And when I started at Lucky Rice, who was my second client when I went into private practice, I became COO there. We hosted food events, and then I was reconnected with the food community in all of the cities that we had food festivals. And then COVID hit, and I started volunteering, actually, pro bono for my clients and participants in Lucky Rice to help them get out of their leases and just renegotiate different terms. And then I found my way back and formed a hospitality group. I now am a partner at Cha Cha Tang and Sal Tang's. Please come. But that's kind of how I ended up in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, I would say, food found me definitely. I think at my lowest point in life, like in my early 20s, just kind of like bumbling around and trying to figure out my like professional love. I didn't have that yet. I started actually like baking and making ice cream on the weekends, and sharing it with my neighbors and friends and family. And there was just a lot. Whenever I made ice cream, there was people remembered and started to kind of, whenever they saw me, they would be like, "Where's the ice cream? Where's the ice cream?" So it just became a thing where I was just constantly making more and more ice cream and wanting to perfect it, and then wanting to make my own flavors. And that's kind of how the toasted rice ice cream was born. And it's like pretty much like Noona's signature ice cream flavor, and we won best flavor for it when I launched the business back in the summer of 2016. And it's still a top seller to this day. And
I heard somebody go very happy. They're like, "Yeah, over here, someone over here loves your ice cream." So
yeah, just like that single flavor really jump-started Noona's. And with my family and my friends, like that flavor in particular, it really resonated with a lot of people. And people were like, "You should make a business out of this. You should, like, you have something." And just with that support, and just having even one person say, "Yeah, like this is memorable, this is special to me," just I guess gave me that drive to keep making ice cream and focusing on that. And that's really why I focused on ice cream to start. And then it just became like, yeah, maybe I have something, and I thought of a name and brought it out to market and just grew the business bit by bit. So yeah, I think just being around people that, were kind of cheering me on really made a difference, and just sparked that initial fire within me. And then the rest is kind of like I just kind of kept going. So
Well,
yeah.
Alice, did you find that you said you homebrewed? So how did this become? Because I don't know if everyone knows, but Alice pioneered the first in the United States Makgeolli brewery and distillery, and she paved the way. So tell us a little bit about that, because that's no easy feat to do.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think it was a combination of like inevitability, but also a little bit of resistance. My dad actually, after having been an artist and then working in jewelry and then taking a gap year to figure out what he wanted to do when I was growing up, he started restaurants in the Central Coast of California. So from the ages of like 10 to 18, I was in the restaurants, eating at the restaurants, working at the restaurants, and I had been around that my whole life. In addition to that, I had been homebrewing at home with my dad, but it was as if you learn how to cook. It wasn't intentional. I didn't really understand exactly what was happening, but I developed an intuition for it. Hana Makgeolli, though, was supposed to be a passion project. It was a very expensive passion project, but a passion project nonetheless, because it's not like I didn't like my job in consulting. I was good at it. I liked my clients. I liked the challenge, and I liked the travel. So the really turning point for me, though, was this realization of the history of Sur and the culture around the method of making. And, just to be blunt about it, it was the fact that this methodology was invented by, advanced, experimented with, documented, and preserved ultimately through times of, war and famine and repression. That was the kind of moment that really hooked me and made me think, okay, well, there's a deeper reason for why I'm drawn to this. And the starting of the brewery, it was very natural. I mean, certainly it was hard, but I had been homebrewing, selling, don't tell the government, selling makgeolli for, just like cash and Venmo, illegally for like 6 years prior to the brewery opening. So it's not like it happened out of nowhere, the proof of concept had been in development for many, many years. And it was actually the meeting with my business partner, John Lim, mentor turned business partner, that really gave me the confidence to go after it.
Awesome. And 8282, how did that come to be?
For me, it was really COVID that got me into the business. Also, my boyfriend, current husband, is a chef. So it is really a labor of love, the restaurant that I'm operating right now. As cheesy and corny that is, but that's the truth. Honestly,
That's okay.
I don't think it wasn't really in the pipeline to be a restaurant owner at this point in my life, but it happened and we're doing great, and don't really recommend working with your spouse, but to be honest, family business is hard, but it is a very beautiful kind of child that we put together. That's 8282 currently.
Mm-hmm. That said, we spoke a little bit about COVID and lockdown, but it's just going to be a hot potato. So we did speak a little bit about this, and navigating COVID for all of us as a whole was difficult enough. However, as a food business, as we all know, there are things that just happened that put everything to a screeching halt, and trying to reconfigure how to have a business at that time, or to start a business or maintain a business. On a personal basis, I ordered a lot of Hannah's ice cream. And this was kind of still the genesis of Noona's. It was still in its first years. And she hand delivered it to my doorstep, stepped away from it about 6 feet. And she was like, "Hi." I said, "Hello. We can't hug," but I tossed her some cookies that were in a bag. And I said, "Here, thank you for coming all the way up here." And so there's just many ways that this had to kind of put a wrench into things, but also there was the added concept of anti-Asian crime that was happening everywhere, and businesses were very affected by that. So I want to ask all of you, how did that affect the way you did business? How did that affect your clients? How did that affect, and have things improved since then?
Well, I can start. I think the pandemic, it altered the way we do business in a way that any event in history has, there's nothing close to it, at least in like our lifetimes. Whether it meant, do you remember when everything was on Zoom? Like everything was digital, right? And we had to speak to our consumers from a screen or through a screen. Outside of that, there was, of course, like the economic hardship that people were facing during the pandemic. And, they had to choose whether they're going to, spend that dollar on a small business, an independent business owned by Korean women, or whether they're going to spend it on Amazon, right? And you had to really convince them of that decision. And during a time when, supply chains were breaking down and inflation was on the rise, it felt like a nearly impossible situation. I was like, why the heck did I start now? Or like, why did it happen now, right? But first thing I'd like to share is that during that time, we all have our lows, but my parents, one day I called them crying, and I don't do that often. And they said, 걱정하는 게 잘 안 어울려. Right? They were so like cold about it, but it really gave me a sense of motivation and fighting, right? And that really helped me carry through. Outside of that, we saw Asian communities, Asian business owners mobilize in a way that we had never seen before. We were organized. We were helping each other. When typically, like, our cultures, mandate that we're alone in our hardship, or we isolate ourselves, or that we compete with each other, right? And so that sense of community was really revitalizing, at least for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, I think COVID brought the best and the worst in people in a lot of ways. And the interesting thing about having a restaurant, especially in a place like New York, is it's kind of the front line where you can see everything in action. So my husband just acquired a sushi restaurant right before the pandemic, which I just came back from Korea. COVID already happened in Korea. Like, I already foresaw COVID happening. So I was like, oh my God, like, we're all going to die. And it came in about 2 months. So I had to convince his team to change the omakase sushi restaurant into a delivery concept, which at that time, Grubhub, if you guys remember, wasn't really that popular in New York. Maybe like just among corporate culture, but not really for everyday New Yorkers. And it was really during that time where I was able to meet mentors, actually like Vivian, who helped me to get my partners and my husband out of that lease. And again, it was a time where I like to remember it as a challenge that allowed me to think really outside the box and grow as an operator.
Julia.
So we had opened the shop in January 2020. went down to get married in January, and then the COVID came in March. So we had a busy Valentine's Day, so we had like a little taste of what it could be, and then everything came to a halt. And I remember in my frazzled mind, I put together a website in like 2 days, and I lucked out because I'm a food stylist and I have a lot of photographer friends who offered to help me take good pictures of the products. So I don't even remember how I put it. I think I just paid something on Shopify, and then I chose whatever fastest thing that I could put together as a website. But in hindsight, COVID was really like a blessing for us in a way, because that catapulted the online orders of the chocolate. A lot of people are sending, hey, I'm thinking of you. Sorry, I can't be there. A lot of chocolates to friends and family. And it was surreal, but I just didn't see it until later that it was also a blessing in disguise for us. So as hard as it was, it kept us going. And obviously with my husband, we're able to stay sane also, I think, because we're able to go out and work and do something and not be holed up in the house together. Maybe then I would have killed him. So overall, I would say that a lot of hardships, but also good things that came out of COVID.
He is sitting in the back, just so you know. But I do want to actually add to that. There you go. Yay. I do want to add to that Julia and Roger, they do run Vesta Chocolate out in Montclair, New Jersey. And they were featured actually in demonstrating in COVID gear of how they were serving at their store for American Express, I believe. And I personally screamed when I saw that the commercial, and I was like, because you know how hard everyone was working at that time to just stay afloat. There was just no thriving at that time. And it was just remarkable that I just want to give you a little bit of props right now because all of you are still here.
Well, it was definitely like a throw everything on the wall and see what sticks mentality.
Very much.
I miss COVID. Anyone miss COVID? To be honest, COVID actually changed the trajectory of my career. And it really showed me the innovation and the inventiveness of a lot of my clients and the resilience. So I wouldn't have met Jee if it wasn't for COVID. She was one of now over 60 clients that I have. I represent over 60 restaurants and chefs in the city. I also have clients in California. And I think, honestly, if it wasn't for COVID, for example, Jee launched a mask business called Ma Mask, and she was featured in Elle magazine and many different publications. And she donated a lot of masks. My other client, Pearl River Mart, because of the logistics in bringing over a lot of her goods, she was able to ship massive amounts of masks from China and also distribute to a lot of different entities in need. Another highly affected area was Chinatown. And a lot of people blame Chinatown for some reason, as we all know. And so the businesses there really suffered. Some of my business, now partners, but clients at the time, had to pivot into delivery. Right. So similar to Vesta, one of my clients, Namwa, built a USDA dumpling factory, which is now servicing all states, and they distribute through Gold Belly, and they are now a vendor with US Foods, which is one of the largest food distribution companies in America. So, good things did happen from the pandemic. My business actually started pro bono, but once they started coming back and making money, I became their lawyer. So I really do miss COVID, and I do miss being home. And now that I'm working on the restaurant operations side, mostly in marketing, but it's a very tough business, and you really have to love it. And that resilience, I think, really shows me, again, we were all talking in the back, like, why are we in this business? It's not for the money.
No.
But it is for the love and the community, which I really, really love and enjoy. So.
What about you, Hannah?
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. I would say I have a similar experience as Julia at Vesta. I was already shipping ice cream nationwide, so I already had like a delivery online ordering system in place. But I did do something different, and I did try to, push it even more. And also coupled with the fact that the Asian American community was all banding together and trying to support each other. That really pushed our sales even more, like with the push that I was already trying to make, and then with just Asian Americans wanting to support other Asian American businesses, small businesses. There definitely was a shift for sure with COVID, and just the way that just the whole world, just the mindset, I think was shifting. Whether it was where they want to put their money, what they value. I think everyone in their minds was kind of restructuring their brains and what's important to them, and what really matters to them. So all of that really did help. A small Asian American business owner like myself, like one of the things that I implemented was, to push even to push our online sales even more by giving free delivery, like no delivery fee for any local orders, like within the tri-state area. And it also, one thing that I do miss about COVID is there was just no traffic. So I took advantage of that in terms of like the fact that I knew that there, like literally when I went outside, like there was no cars on the road. I was like, I'll give free local delivery, and that I would do it myself, and like get those sales and put in that effort so that once this pandemic ends, or if it ever ends, that we'll be in a better place than we were. And because I did have everything like already set up in place for, shipping and all of that. So why not? And yeah, that's why I like hand delivered it myself to Caroline.
It was really nice to see you. I was at the time, it was almost a little emotional. I was like, I can't even hug you, and you're my friend.
And that way,
but I mean, that said, we're all saying, that we miss certain things about COVID, but sorry, not sorry. We're all here because certain things happened that improved. That said, there is progress that obviously has been made for all of us to be here today in the last 20 years, let alone the last 10. And where our faces are becoming more prominent in the community, there's still a lot of pushback, and there's still a lot of unspoken rules and things that we just have to keep fighting all the time. The stigma of being an Asian American woman, let alone in our community of being Korean American. So that said, there's still a boys' club. I'm just going to say it. There's still a boys' club. This industry is still very predominantly male. And also, there's the added stresses of needing to keep up with social media. Don't know about you, but there's always a new channel and a new app that you have to get on and keep up with. And just doing this, all trying to manage your business at the same time and maintain yourself at the same time. And so I guess my question to all of you, and this will probably be, again, similar journey, but different. What has been your biggest frustration, but what keeps you driven to continue? That's why I asked it. The question is, what's been your biggest frustration in all of this and having to navigate still all the speed bumps that there are still barriers still being broken down. But what's your biggest frustration and what drives you to continue?
I think maybe right now the biggest frustration is the fact that I can't control inflation. So a box of eggs that used to cost us $60 is now $120. So it's complete. And at the same time, we're a chocolate shop that has premium products. I can raise price more than what it is right now. People will boycott, they will go mad. So I'm just kind of stuck in a point where I can change the price, but everything else gotten so expensive. So maybe those are the very frustrating parts, some things that I just cannot control. But what keeps me going is sometimes I feel like I'm going because I'm just in this circle and you kind of have to go. You started it, you know, it's your business, your baby, and you can't really stop. There's a sunken cost. You already come 5 years in. So there's that. Also, just the fact that I work with my husband, you know, love or hate it, but it is a labor of love, like you said, you know, working with your spouse. So in that sense, this business means more than just business, and I would hate to see it go to waste. So I think that's what keeps me going.
I think working with a lot of different clients, I specifically tried to support Asian women. And again, I think maybe because everyone had their own business, so they were like the king of their castle. I don't think I heard many complaints about, you know, being a woman and having any kind of difficulty with that. What I think was great about having me as their lawyer was giving them the platform and foundation to understand that there are rules and anybody can build anything they want. And once they realize that power, there's no limit. And, you know, I work with Jee, and I mean, all of the women on this panel are so impressive, but I don't think I felt a lot of the structural commentary that you're saying, but I think maybe because of the fact that they're entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite story is I walk into the restaurant and my vendors come, 99% of the time male, and they ask me, some of them, most of them don't speak English, and they're just like, who's the person to sign? Like, who's the man of the house, basically? And I'm just like, oh my God. Like, I mean, at this point, 3-4 years down the line, like my vendors and I are buddies. Like, we like bump fists, and he knows to come to me to sign. But I think in the beginning, again, we're Korean, so we don't really raisin, right? We don't really age. So a lot of times, a lot of times it's kind of hard for other people to know who I am and kind of my kind of stature in terms of the presence, and maybe someone who's a male counterpart will just don't really have to explain themselves in that way. So that was interesting for me, just as someone who is quite international, having lived in many different cities, also very Korean, but also very American. In the food space, there is such, you know, unspoken kind of rules, and but comparatively, I do think it is very welcoming, which, you know, it is about food. Like, it's not about the ego, but it is, if the food's not good, like, who cares, right? Like, you're not gonna frequent a place if the food's not good, or the drinks are not good, or the ambiance is not good. So if those three things are not met in that space, why bother? So I think kind of bringing it back to the simple mindset of what is the product that we're actually selling in these spaces is quite important.
Yeah, I also similarly face kind of what you mentioned, where like people kind of overlook you and assume that you have absolutely no authority or no expertise. And yeah, it's really annoying. It's really annoying, and it really gets to you sometimes. And you know, I think, Vivian, what you were mentioning about like not always feeling that, I think I like to convince myself that I don't feel that. But then there's moments where you're like, oh crap, I'm getting discriminated against, you know? But I think this mentality, there was a shift in perspective for me about 3 years in 2023. We were, you know, at 150% capacity. We were producing so much. We were opening in new markets, like all of this stuff. And we had a couple wins under our belt. And I thought to myself, no man could do this. Right? Because to not only build a brewery, but to build a makgeolli brewery in the U.S. For a category that's like practically unrepresented, and to run a tasting room, and to go to do sales. Like, we all wear so many hats, right? And frankly, I think women perform better. And in that sense, the power is assumed, right? And I find great comfort in that a lot of the times, and is certainly the message that I wanted to portray, like the more positive, empowering message.
But it's your truth.
Today. Yeah. And really, you know, but during the low moments, the things that keep me going is seeing Korean food, seeing Korean sur suddenly be respected and recognized and adored in spaces that are typically, you know, where it was overlooked. And additionally, and I'm sure you guys all feel the same way, there are so many young women and BIPOC entrepreneurs that, you know, aside from us, are starting to come up.
Definitely.
And they're looking up to us, and they're asking questions. And when I have a tough day and one of them email me, I'm like, okay, time to put my, you know, motivational hat on, right, for them. And if anything, that's the thing that really keeps me going more than anything.
She's got.
I definitely identify with all these women up here. But at the same time, I've like been in this body, like looked this way, my whole life. So it's kind of like, at some point it's like life is unfair, and to kind of spend too much time thinking, oh, what percentage is of like whether it's like the way that I dress or the way that I look, whether I'm Asian, whether I'm woman, whether I'm like small, petite, and if I have my hair up and whatever, I look like I'm 18, things like that. It's like if I thought about all those things at all the time, I wouldn't get any work done. So and I don't know, maybe I would just like off myself or something. But it's so for me, it's the challenges that I face, it's I kind of treat it like there's a lot of unfairness and in life, and a lot of those things are outside of your control. You cannot really force certain changes in this world. And so for me, it's kind of like waking up and just trying to put my best foot out there and do what I can, and use the skills like ice cream making and baking and all of that to put some joy into my life and other people's lives. And that's kind of how I go about my day a lot of the times. I mean, there's definitely challenges of the fact that especially with food, it's hard to raise your prices, and there's only a certain amount of money that people will pay for certain items and things like that. And food specifically is very hard to like raise, like clothing, jewelry, or whatever. It's a lot easier to kind of like raise your prices. But yeah, like with sweets, like chocolate, ice cream, especially things that are like, is not like sausages and, you know, we're like daily breakfast essential, like dinner stuff. It's more like indulgent treats where there's a bit of a cap in terms of how much you can price something. So that's definitely been challenging with like with milk, you know, prices, you know, doubling, tripling, things like that. But yeah, you know, there's something, I don't know, I can't see myself doing anything else. At the end of the day, it's like, no matter how grueling it is day to day, it's like I go home and then I wake up and I'm like, yeah, let's do this again.
Thank you for
So-
sharing that. I mean, so we unfortunately are running out of time, and we have time for one more question before we go to Q&A. But this has been very much your stories. Thank you all for sharing yours. We have similar journeys, but none of them are the same. And so with that mentioned, there is an influence of Korean art culture going worldwide, and that is undeniable and something that ultimately will hopefully help in the long run. But for young people who are other entrepreneurs who are looking to start, for anyone else out there who just needs a little bit of advice or a little bit of a helping hand, because mentorship is still something that a lot of us struggle with, or is a struggle out there, because it is very much, I want to say, a cultural thing of like, you know, ask your 언니 or just see what happens. But 언니 doesn't have time for these things. Sometimes she has to navigate her own space. And so my question to all of us as we're up here is, what is something that we can offer to someone who might be wondering about their own dream? And also, what do we hope for the future?
Just do it.
I was going to say something similar.
Just do it. And I think something that might be comforting to everyone is I work with, you know, 3 Michelin star restaurants, 2 Michelin star restaurants. I work with, you know, all of my clients have one thing in common. They don't know what they're doing 90% of the time.
It is true, just letting you know.
So-
It's true.
So the
We're all
top
figuring it out.
chefs who are getting world's best awards and just, you know, clients that are just starting, we're all the same. And, you know, asking questions, even figuring out what questions to ask, it's everyone's journey. And everyone in this audience, if you want to open a cafe, restaurant, just talk to me. Like, I think community is really what I think has been holding the different restaurants and stuff together. And then the talent is really what's, you know, keeping us on the map. So like your toasted rice, that is a, you know, Asian or Korean inspired dish. And, you know, Atto Mix, Cheongshik just got a 3rd star. Everything is inspired by Korean food. And so I think that basis, and my advice to everyone would be, you know, they all started where where you all are, if you aren't in the business yet or wanting to be in it. And, you know, it only took a couple years. So
I actually have a I'm almost like an opposite thing. I was going to say, don't do it unless you are crazy about it. Small business is very hard to a point where it'll wreck your personal life. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot. Do it if your heart is asking you for it, but know that it's not going to be easy. And also, I think one very practical advice for me would have been to be careful about cash flow. I think a lot of the times people think about the passion and not the operational or the financial side of it. And in hindsight, if I had been a little bit more educated on the finance side, I think it would have been a little bit easier. So that's my one advice.
To kind of go off of both points, first is no one's going to hand it to you. And no one said it was going to be easy. But if you do decide to do it, you have to commit. And I remember the moment that I committed, 2017. I didn't know exactly how it was going to be, but I knew that it was going to be my life. And it didn't really matter what was going to happen. This was going to be my life no matter what. And I think a lot of us these days, in the 21st century, post-2020, post-pandemic, we're all really afraid of getting pigeonholed, right? We want to be good at everything. And then also social media makes it feel like you have to be good at so many things. But the values that maintained Korean food and Korean fermentation and Korean culture till today, the same values that still give us access to that culture today, is commitment, right? And if you want to be that for the next generation, then you have to choose to commit to it.
They stole all my points. So I have nothing to say. I would say really be proud to be Korean. I mean, this is a Korean American panel, so part of me growing up, I came here when I was 7. I wasn't born here, but I'm a naturalized citizen. I'm a half generation. My parents are still in Korea. So I kind of travel both worlds and navigate myself in between. And when you do enter becoming an entrepreneur in New York or anywhere in the States, you do have to become truly American, meaning you have to go into a room, talk to everyone that you see, whatever color, whatever person that you see, because that's just what you have to do. But do not lose sight of the fact that you are representing as a Korean American to all points of businesses. And I think that's what I would recommend.
So I think what I love about business and owning my own business, not having any partners in it, is that it gives me the space to finally express what I want to express and have that space, which is almost like a playroom, like a playground for me, where I can really play around, try different things, see what works, see what sticks. Of course, there's a balance. Obviously, if you make stuff or put something out there that people don't want, then, you don't have a business. But having a business, it forces you to really be to strive for your I guess your best self or your potential, and every day it challenges you and tests you on reaching that potential, and although it's very challenging, it's very rewarding, and it definitely forces you to constantly look in the mirror, evaluate yourself, evaluate the business, see what's working, see what doesn't, and I guess in that sense, I've always been very analytic and more an observer, so it fits my personality. But I think for people that are looking to start a business, or it definitely gives you that space, whatever you want to create, it allows you to create that space for yourself, carve your own path, and define who you want to be and how you want to what you want to put out into the world. So if you find yourself being sort of an outsider, have loving to think outside the box, finding yourself like a little bit like alone in some ways when you're like at work and in a team environment, like maybe consider starting a business and yeah, definitely ask questions. And if that's something that you're thinking about, definitely like ask any of us and for sure. Yeah.
I have one last statement to make on my own behalf, which is that give yourself permission. And I know that was something I had to learn because we are always having brought up, to be very by the rules. And it took for a long time to be able to say, this is what I'm doing, and it's okay for me to do this. So that would be my advice to anybody is just give yourself the permission. But however, it does help. I showed my parents what I was doing, and I showed them the recipes I was making, my silly YouTube things that I was making as well. I thought my mom was going to just be like, what are you doing? Like, you're wasting your time. But she actually watched it, and I remember she just went, I said, this is what I want to do with my life. And she said, okay. And I was bracing myself. I'm like, we're going to fight. We're going to fight. But my husband was in the room, so I'm convinced she was very, keeping it cool. But to have that, it helped to have her blessing. But you don't need it. But I will say that is something that's ingrained in all of us. Undo it. Give yourself the permission. You have the support of people up here who know what the battle is. The journey is long, but you will get there. All right. And that said, and that said, we do have some time for Q&A. So if anybody would like to ask any questions, please raise your hand, and the mic will come to you.
Hi, thank you for the great talk today and sharing your journey, dream, and your life in such a genuine way. I'm not an entrepreneur myself, but I'm a super fan of Korean food, dessert, and drinks. So I just wanted to ask, I know this hospitality business takes everything, is all around service and product, but is there any quality you're really, really working on to improve? Like, I know that I'm good at it, but I want to be even better, something like that.
Just within the space of restaurants, there are metrics. So you do have to set very precise goals on a weekly to a monthly to a quarterly to an annual. Part of the reason why a lot of restaurants fail, because unfortunately not a lot of people have that drive or insight when operating a business as such. But a restaurant, because of the labor that it requires and the lack of labor and all the things combined, it is a very, very difficult business. So again, those goals are very important for you to set.
Mm-hmm. I would also say advocate for each other when you're not in the room. That also helps.
Well, don't those pesky bankers want your business plans before you do anything? And how do you get from producing something to get it into the retail market?
Actually, you can speak on that as well. So one of the offsets of the pandemic, a lot of my clients had to actually pivot into retail. And one of my clients is Pearl River Mart, and she supports Asian businesses. So it became very natural for the restaurants to pivot into CPG. So Besu, for instance, now has a hurikake and a popcorn that they sell and started selling through Pearl River Mart Foods. I have many clients who made chili oil. Actually, I think there's about 100 chili oils now on the market.
A lot more now.
But pivoting into retail, I think, was almost forced for a lot of my clients from restaurants. But it has been a natural kind of progression. I think that's been a difficulty, especially for my clients who are in Whole Foods or Costco. And it really depends because those bigger stores actually start very local. So it's regional, actually. So you might be able to get in Whole Foods New York, for instance, but that doesn't mean you're going to be distributed out in California. And supply and demand is also a big factor in those things. But I think
So Hana Makgeolli, we're a traditional Korean rice wine brewery. You could also say we're a premium Korean rice wine brewery. And as such, like we might not be in your grocery stores, but we're at the independent shops in town, or we're at the natural wine stores or the fine wine stores. And so things are a little bit different for us. It is very relationship driven. And it's about, knowing that owner of the shop, knowing the sommelier, knowing and like spending time with them and connecting with them and telling them your story, not just for the sake of getting a placement on that shelf, but to get them excited about selling your product, right? And for me, the answer has always been education. Right? Not just some funny, great marketing slogan, not just some like cute packaging, but really respecting that other person's ability to understand something that is out of their culture, right? That is maybe beyond their skill set. So for me, it's like fermentation and chemistry, right? And giving them the confidence and the tools to be like, okay, I can represent this product. Right? And that has been the key for us. And I think is going to be the key for like Korean food in general, right? We're kind of at this cusp, like Caroline was saying, with this K wave, right? And so much incredible work has come from it. There's so many new businesses that are, now comprising and making up this market. But there's a fine line between authenticity and dilution, right? And just because something is a trend doesn't mean that you should do it. You need to have lasting roots. You need to have something substantive. You need to have something that's genuinely interesting, right? And then being able to build relationships off that. That's how I would answer your question.
Yeah. To add to that also is that the respect of knowing that we're not a trend. This has been our life for our whole lives. But for others that are being introduced to it, for them, this might be something new, but for them to acknowledge that it's not an ephemeral thing.
We have time for just one last question. And
Hi, my name is Lynn. Thank you so much for coming out here and speaking to us today. My sister Gio and I are proud Koreans, and we're like active on social media and things like that. And we've noticed, the K wave and how so many people are embracing Korean food and culture. And I'm just wondering, how do you guys like cater to different consumer wants while staying close to your roots? And my sister and I remember growing up in elementary school, it was almost like somewhat embarrassing to have kimchi and bulgogi for lunch. And now it's like, you're so cool if you have it. And so it's like, how do you deal with social media changes and just whatever different people want on social media? Things are changing so fast.
I'll before you guys figure it out. A lot of us have been there with the stinky lunchbox unfortunate thing. Truth, I never cared about that. I was like, it's delicious. You don't know what you're missing. But that's, the K-wave is one thing, but it's also like there was a huge investment years ago. What people don't realize is that there was a huge investment from the Korean Culture and Arts Fund, I believe, and to do import worldwide. And it did trickle for a long time. And then all of a sudden, my parents, to them, they came here in 1973 to see kimchi everywhere, to see bibimbap sold in Brooklyn, where they, my dad had to make his own makgeolli and share it with his hospital mates after hours. And it was one of those things that is kind of undeniable. But yeah, it's also one of those things where being Korean shouldn't be your biggest asset that you want to be noticed by, but at the same time, it is something that is embraced. When I was writing a cookbook this year, when I was getting ready to write it, I had to kind of emphasize to them, and by the way, Julia styled that book for me wonderfully. Thank you so much. It was a question of, I had to kind of tell them, I can't give you a Korean cookbook, but I can give you a Korean American one, because I did see a spot in the market that wasn't being as addressed, and it was kind of almost being stigmatized, which was that you're not Korean enough because it's this or that. And we should be the ones to be able to say that. And with more of us getting out there and more of us sharing these things, I think that's where now kids have reached the point of having Korean food in their lunch and saying how much they love it. And that didn't start with us just being in denial about it. It started, it came with us continuing to share despite that hurt that was inevitably harbored. But anyone else want to add to that?
I mean, I've always been pretty shameless about being Korean. So part of the biggest tool that I've kind of mastered was language, perfecting English, perfecting another language, like perfecting Korean. So wherever I am, I can have that conversation to whoever is talking to me or asking me questions. Vis-a-vis social media, yes, there is an algorithm, unfortunately. Yes, there is a way to do things in order for you to have more clicks and likes and the metrics for that. But to be honest, like, I don't care. Like, I don't really, the message that I'm making for myself and my product and my services is that. So, just to go back to, just, you have to really build that character for yourself, I think. And that's really important.
One of the things that we make for Lunar New Year every year is doenjang caramel truffle. I don't know did I ever share that with you?
You did.
So it's basically like salty caramel truffles, but it's with doenjang, and you could really taste the umami in it, and everybody goes crazy over it. So one of the things that we try to do is to elevate Korean elements or Korean food to like a higher level, and share with everybody. So it's like a little things, subtle things, but I'm doing it.
So a lot of my clients hire PR agencies, to be honest, to help them with social media. And some of them do it by themselves organically. But I think the supportive community and people like yourselves just reaching out and being open has really helped, at least for my clients, to expand their base and kind of look at someone else's point of view on how they like your doenjang chocolate or whatever. So
I guess for me, creating Noona's ice cream and bake shop, and having those what I call Asian American flavors, it's the flavors are what they are because I was born and raised in New York City. I've been to South Korea twice.
One more time than me.
I don't have a lunchbox experience. My lunchbox was roast beef on bread and some those cheese stick like on crackers and gushers or fruit roll up or whatever so like Capri Sun, like that's what I grew up on. And the only time that I had Korean food and the only time I really felt that Korean side of myself was at dinner, actually. Breakfast, lunch was always like American food, Italian food. And dinner was like when we had like bulgogi, like kimbap or, kalbi or something, And so for me, it was like to start Noona's Ice Cream, to name the company after the Korean word big sister. It gave me a place where to like define what like for myself what it means to be Korean and American, and to carve out a space where I know that there's other people out there that, you know, struggle with, okay, like how Korean I am, how American I am, how like fitting in where they belong. And I think for a lot of people, you know, I know this to be true because I get emails and things like that of, you know, people who are, whether it's like half Korean, half Asian, or, you know, or in a biracial relationship, things like that. You know, I always get those kind of customers being like, this is so amazing and thank you. Like it's, you know, I think that blend, there's something familiar, there's something comforting, but there's something new. I don't think you could, I mean, maybe now, but when I started Noona's, you know, you can't really go to Korea or Asia and, you know, it's just, it makes sense that Noona's was born here, even the way that the packaging design is, you know, whether it's the style, the flavors, the unique blend of everything, it makes sense that it was born here and not in Korea. So to say like Korean American, Asian American, that's more appropriate and that's more accurate and that's more true.
And it is who we are, and wonderfully so. Please support all of their businesses, and thank you for also representing for us. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the wonderful conversation. We have some little bit more makgeolli left in the back. I think cookies are gone. But thank you again to Hannah and Hannah for the cookies and Alice for the makgeolli. But hope you guys all enjoyed the evening. Thank you so much.
Yay!